while you get settled. Are you ready for it? I hope so, because it's happening. So long to admit I was wrong and need to hurt anyone. Oh, yeah. Always said you'd be true. Every night was up to you. Didn't want to make you feel blue. Oh, yeah. Baby, can't you see that I still need to be free? You say that I need to be free. You say that I still need to be free. It's so much. I'm not sure it's going to start now. 7 more minutes? We have like 20 songs in 7 more minutes. Oh, my songs are so short. Okay, here's another one. Just let me check my list. Um, okay. Say what you want. That was something I dreamt of every day. Yes, on you. Would take it back to you. Moments I wish you knew. Trying to make me try to feel so long. I just need something that's time. Even I am trying to be trying to it's so it's me. Moving and straight to me. Oh, you Thank you. About 7 minutes? No, probably not. More. Rock dog. 666. One of those things? Okay. Being signal. Thank you for having us. This is my sister Chill. I'm Anna. Our last name is Haverstock, if you care. Yeah, this is so cool to be a part of. And this song's called These Years. It was Pride theme in like 2016 or 17. I don't even remember the year. Wow. How it's stored away. You need to fight it. wanna change my mind. Until the day I find me in my favorite place. McNally Robinson. How you so long. You'll never single day. Take me to find what change my mind. It's never ending. Just to I know you come on back. But until I day since you ran away, just gonna get that busy feeling in my life. I will so adorable. Also, there's like three people wearing pink hats. Good thing I didn't wear my pink hat. Girl, I don't have one. Now I gotta get one. And I'm having a good stage manager. We're good. Amazing. Thank you for listening to us. We'll be back later. Yes, thank you for being here. So.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. My name is Jasper Dent. I'm the events coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory. This is the land of the Cree, Bene, Soto, Dakota, Nakota, and homeland of the Métis Nation. Just to note that this event is being live streamed, so please just be aware of the web camera up to your right here. I'd also like to take this time to remind you all to silence your phones. Turn them off, please. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the celebratory launch of this special issue of Folklore Magazine, Unapologetically Queer, Sharing Our Stories. This was a collaboration between the Saskatchewan History and Folklore Society and Spark Your Pride. I'd like to thank the whole team at SHFS and Spark Your Pride for creating this important record of queer life, and thank you all for coming out tonight to celebrate these stories. I'd also like to thank Anna and Jill Haverstock for starting us off with some great music. It's very nice to come into. And I'd like to thank Kristen and Scavanaugh with SHFS for all of her work coordinating this event. She was my point person. I could not have made this work without you. And now, to tell you all a bit more about Unapologetically Queer and the collaboration that made it possible, I'd like to introduce Cheryl Oatman. Cheryl is chair of Spark Your Pride, and outside of Spark, she's involved in both local and national queer organizations. In her day job, she's a faculty member at the Edwards School of Business at the University of Saskatchewan. Everyone, please give her a very warm welcome.
evening and welcome. She says it has to be turned up louder. How's this, you guys? How's the sound at the back there? Randy, can you hear us? Turn your hearing aid out there, girl. Welcome this evening to this really important event, and I really want to thank each and every one of you for coming out and sharing this evening with us as we do this launch and the readings from the journal. I also want to take a moment to thank McNally Robinson for offering up this space, this wonderful space, and for doing all the work to set up the chairs and to do the promotion for it. We couldn't have had such a great event without their support. So as I said, I want to thank you. The Spark Your Pride is an organization that is dedicated to celebrating the lives and history and culture of Saskatchewan's 2S LGBTQI plus community. The journey for this journal began, isn't that a play on words, that the trip to this journal began about 5 years ago when we recognized that our history was being lost, that the young people in our community had no idea about the past, that in fact, they were completely ignorant. I had the experience of talking to a young man about the past and saying, you know, I remember the AIDS crisis of the 1980s and 90s. And he said, what AIDS crisis? And then we also, as a group of people, recognized that we were passing on. We were aging and passing on quickly. And so our stories were disappearing forever and ever. No one was writing them down. No one was collecting them. And the first group of people who were having these thoughts and who created Spark Your Pride, actually, one of them is right here this evening. That's Mike McCoy. He was the original chair of Spark Your Pride. Thank you, Mike, for your work. And I don't think Cora Mitchell is here. She was the other chair. And some, I'm sorry, other member of the committee and some of the, although I think that there are other committee members here this evening, I think for you, we're grateful because your energy brought together a group of people that said, we have to do something about collecting our stories. We have to do something about telling those stories. And so Spark was born. The reality is that if we don't do this work, no one will. The textbooks the books, the history books in this great bookstore don't have our stories in them. The Saskatchewan History book doesn't have our stories in it. The conversations and records in our communities don't tell about us or don't talk about us. The conversations in our communities never tell about our journey, our fight, our fears, and our successes. And so we knew, as those people who started this organization did, and we do today, that we had to do the work to get that, to put that together. And so that's what we've been doing. For this journey, it's been a matter of finding people, because that's the next thing that has happened is we've been so afraid to tell our stories that we don't even know where we are. And so part of the work that we've engaged in is trying to find our community, find those stories so we can actually collect them. We can listen to them and we can put them out into your arena so that you can see them. Do the wonderful work of this journal and the people who created it. We're going to have them come up a little bit later and talk. So that's an important part of our journey, has been finding and then collecting and telling those stories through the publications like this, which is where Saskatchewan History and Folklore Society came along. About a year ago, a chance meeting, and actually not chance, but a productive conversation said to us, we want to be there in that journey with you. This is really, really important in our organization, SHFS. This is something over SHFS when I say 2S LGBTQ plus I plus without even batting an eye. But they came along on that journey with us, and they've been inspirational because every step of the way they said, what can we do to help you make this successful? And I think tonight's journal that well, some people got the mail, but we have copies here tonight. Oh, we do have copies here tonight. It is the way it is because of their commitment and their support of our work in this endeavor. So I want to take a moment to thank them, and they're going to get more recognition later on because they damn well deserve it. Let's take a moment to give their peer team. about this journey. I actually wrote these notes on a small piece of paper because I have 5 minutes. I don't know if this would work, but there's two things I want to say before I sit down. Maybe three. But this has been a transformative and personal experience. When we talk to those people about their stories, it was inspirational for them. It was just cathartic because suddenly someone was saying to them, "What is your story? We want to talk about it publicly. We want to tell people about what you've experienced in your lives." And for them, this was amazing point or amazing experience of sharing and maybe even expressing a love for what they've been through. So this was part of the journey, has been connecting with our community. And in doing so, we've actually been able to form an even stronger community because we're talking about our stories. We're finding courage in our stories. And we're able to then tell our youth about those stories, who then turn around and say back to us, what courage you have. And we are inspired by your courage. And we are inspired by the fact that you have lived your authentic lives in spite of a community and a province and a country that's actually not made your lives easy. And so in many ways, they have been part of that journey with us. And we actually used many younger folks to collect these stories. And every one of them came back to us and said, that was amazing. I felt so proud and so connected to my past and what has been achieved. So I think that this has been an experience for all of us. That many of the people here, I didn't do the interviews, but the people who did the interviews and the chair of the committee, who have been introduced in a second, she's tapping the foot like get off. For all of us, this has been an empowering experience, and one that I hope that we can share back to you through the next iteration of the stories, because we've actually been able to collect over the last 5 years a large number of stories. Well, I would say not large, because I think there's thousands of us out in this province that are out there that have stories to tell, and we have to collect them, put them into documents and stick them into archives so that we can have more journals and more events like this where we're celebrating our history and we're proud to be queer in our community. So I want to end with that note and welcome Terry Summers, who was actually the chair of the committee that wrote, sorry, she was chair of a group of people who put this journal together. So Terry, go on up.
Thank you. I'm not going to rehash anything that Cheryl said, but I do have a couple of really important things to say. And the very first thing is that I want to thank profusely those members of our community who chose to share their stories. And even though I think everyone is really proud of the journal, there was a lot of convincing to do to let people, sort of give them permission to tell their stories publicly. We are humble people, and we're very quiet about our lives. And most of the people who ended up sharing their stories thought that they didn't have anything to say and that their stories weren't interesting. And from day one, our committee absolutely guaranteed every single person that everybody's story matters. And I think when you read the journal, you also will say every person's story matters. And so thank you to those of you who appear in the journal. We very much appreciated your time and your effort and sharing your very, very personal stories with us. As Cheryl said, it was transformative for those of us who also conducted the interviews. I can say from my own experience that I developed some very deep friendships because of that experience. And people that I now consider very, very close friends, because we shared a lot of really intimate details about lives and shared things that matter. Not all of those details appear in all of these stories, but they were very important parts of every person's story. I think the people that were involved in this project As Cheryl mentioned, we were fortunate enough to, at the very beginning, work with a group of students from the U of S. And not to make anyone feel uncomfortable, but Sarah here was one of them. And I know that she will agree that it was a really valuable experience for the students. And we had some unexpected benefits from that relationship that we weren't planning when we started, but it created, I think, some connections and some warmth and some understanding between our generations. And that's a really wonderful byproduct of this project. I'd also like very much to thank the people on our working committee who spent hours working on the journal. And we're all very proud of how it came to be and the resulting publication. But I can't thank every one of them enough for the energy that went into producing that journal. And last but not least, the people who actually volunteered to conduct the interviews. And if anybody's interested, we are now moving on to our next project, and we will be looking for more volunteers to tell their stories, more volunteers to capture the stories, and more volunteers to help us promote their stories throughout the province. So with that, I will move on to the next introduction. And our partner in this journal exercise, Kristen, I don't think you'll ever know how much this really has meant to our community. But I think we'll all see the results of that in a few weeks after people have had a chance to go through the journal. So thank you. But I would like to introduce Kristen Kavanagh, the Executive Director of Saskatchewan History and Folklore Society.
Wonderful. I'll start with a quick story. So I was in the washroom and I was talking to Barbara and I said to her, oh, well, I don't have to say anything tonight. And a second later, my phone rang and it was president of my board, Jessica DeWitt, who was going to bring meetings today, who had caught her 2-year-old's flu. And so it's me to give the thank you, but actually that's wonderful because I was wondering how I was going to find the time and be able to have time to say all these wonderful thank yous that need to be said. So yeah, my name is Kristen Kavanagh. I'm Executive Director for the Saskatchewan History and Folklore Society, and we are just so proud and pleased to have gotten to be part of this. And there are so many thank yous to say. I'll say we should thank our funders. We are funded by Sask Culture Celebrities Trust System, and also this particular special edition was funded through a grant from the Canada Periodical Fund, which is Department of Canadian Heritage. So thanks to our funders for that. But then the most important thank yous go to all of the folks in the community who shared their stories, and to my fellow community folks, Terry and Belinda, who you'll meet in a minute. Just all the wonderful times we had over coffee, hashing out all the details of the publication and agonizing over commas and just getting everything prepared. And so it was just such a wonderful time, and it's been such an incredible joy. And we really hope to do more of these in the future. So thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, so now for the real fun part of tonight. Enough with the speeches. We're lucky enough to we'll have 3 individual speakers representing 3 of the stories that are actually in the journal. And so if you haven't had a chance to read the journal yet, this will give you a little sneak peek into some of the stories that are in the journal. But I will call upon our first presenter, Dean. Dean is going to speak on behalf of Bob. And so Bob's story appears firstly in our journal. And I don't want to spoil the story, but what I will say is that unfortunately Bob passed away before this journal was published. And Dean, as a family member, is here to talk about Bob's story.
everyone. Hey, my love you. Understatement. Robert Troy Blair. This is a quote from Bob. I should win an Oscar for my life, he says. Bob told me this once. We both laughed. That moment in time, and that statement stood for me. Although we didn't know the initial reason Bob chose to participate in this wonderful special edition of Folklore, his experiences reflect a path that, in my opinion, is seen through the eyes of a young person. How excited to be seeing life events for the first time every day, on every day, for the rest of your life. This I could see in Bob's eyes, excitement for the day. Bob always moved forward, challenging his next move, plan, travel the globe, enjoy music and theater, gain knowledge, love his pets and animals of all kinds, and simply being with others. He never let him being gay and out cloud his energy and love of simply being alive. Bob's Oscar-winning life in front of everyone has its challenges away from the public view. Insecurity of getting older, being alone, health issues, and anxiety of being in pain. Those of you who had an opportunity to be around Bob realized quickly he had a charmed life. Only one of many different lives expressed in this wonderful edition we are celebrating tonight. Bob would return from trips all over the world with new and exciting outfits. One such trip home and subsequently to his school workday the next day, it would be about the mid-60s. He wore a chocolate-colored onesie with a bright yellow neck scarf. I have seen the picture. Looking back that day, perhaps in his own expressions of freedom, was a bit ahead of the fashion trend at the time for Brandon. These are his thoughts. Bob moved forward in his activities and rarely was critical of other situations around him. In fact, he always expressed his opinion to aid in allowing others to be themselves. His school as principal was the first that he was aware of to introduce special needs children into the regular classroom setting. His school, to my knowledge, was the only school in Manitoba and the rest of Canada that children were actively looking after snakes, birds, squirrels, small creatures at the school. The children learned to care and respect animals. We also have a picture of Bob sitting at his desk in his office at the school with a squirrel on his shoulders. To put into context how fast time goes by, Bob would go to neighborhood's house to watch TV simply because they had one. Public TV, he was a teenager. As the years passed, Bob experienced the dating world, answering ads in newspapers, meeting other like-minded persons on work trips and holidays. He had a mutual respect from his partner, Monty. A person finds a way to adapt, and Bob did that very gracefully through his professional career and his life in Saskatoon. Bob wanted to share his time, his presence with others. He felt blessed to be around everyone. Meeting JFK in person was a highlight of his younger years. Being robbed of his watch, a gift from Monty just weeks before, in a baseball park late at night in Germany, was not something that he would expect. Bob told me he really liked that watch. There are many stories over the years I was privileged to hear, but nothing was greater than his move to Saskatoon. It changed my life. Introduced me to my life partner, Danny, love of my life. Decisions, even the small ones, do influence others. The stories in this magazine reflect that not all paths in life are charmed, and that we must all, as Bob did, look to fill the gaps in some of life's, in someone's life, as we must all do, as Bob did, look to fill the gaps in some of life. Sorry, I just said that. I'll start over here. Decisions, even small ones, do influence others. The stories in this magazine reflect that not all paths in life are charmed and that we must all, as Bob did, look to fill in the gaps of someone's life as he has done for persons around him. That sounds better, doesn't it? It is to him enough to know that he wanted and did try his best to be our support in our lives as a family, in our home, long as possible. Bob's presence in our lives gave me, Danny, momentum to move forward in all aspects of our lives and grow as individuals. He did this for others too, every single day. I'd like to take a moment just to let you know or tell you about how I met Bob. I was a year or so out of high school in between jobs and was at the unemployment workshop on how to write resumes offered by the Unemployment Insurance Office in Brandon. At this class, the woman teaching the class was indicating places to apply for employment in the city of Brandon. I remember her saying, and I quote, "If you don't want to work for a gay man, then don't go to Brandon School of Immigration." I said to myself, well, I'm gay. I don't mind working for a gay man. I proceeded to enter Bob's office at the Brandon School of Immigration that same day, and without missing a beat, I introduced myself and told him I was gay. And I don't mind working for a gay man. Bob's next words forever changed my life. Can you type? That was it. Can you type? Luckily I did, and this began our 36 plus years that changed both of our lives. Going through items of paperwork in his room, I found 3 letters from young teenage boys who had vandalized his car while he was teaching California in 1963. He told me he was very proud of that car. It was a white 1963 Chrysler convertible. The letters go on to say and apologize for the damage the boys had done to his car because they realized later in that same school year how kind and open and forgiving Bob was, and they felt that he had misjudged him from the beginning. Wouldn't it be great to track down those 3 boys, now adults, to thank them and tell them that their letters do matter, and the apology matters, and that after 60 plus years, their actions are still influencing others, being told. It is important to recognize and apologize for misunderstandings you might have, but one should never apologize for being one's gay self. Friends and persons close to Bob encouraged him to write down the wonderful and somewhat eye-opening events that took place in his life. I found on his computer a file, which he had started, that was from his birth to early teenage years, about 3 typed pages. What he had typed was remarkable, and I'd hoped that he had continued, while it never took place. Perhaps this story in this magazine will be enough to encourage others to live their best lives. Take time to read their stories, share with others, give back to the community, never lose hope. I'm almost done. To understand Bob is to understand that hope and faith and trust is in each one of us. Everyone that met Bob loved him. Take the time to read these stories in this issue. It gives hope. They tell of love, hardship, and that you're never alone. I personally have a great deal to learn about life, but you can start at any time to be a better you in your own life, be a better person for others. These are also Bob's words. In our gay community, the more stories that are told, it will encourage everyone to have a more fulfilling, loving life. Thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me to talk about my friend Bob.
We'll just keep going.
Okay, keep going.
So our second speaker for tonight is hiding in the back row. So Barbara, Judy, if you'd like to come up and give us a little sneak peek into your story.
Leg I stand on, I got a new hip. See that? My kids were measuring me the other day and I was like, well, which leg? Well, the long one. So I'll just Judy and I actually were interviewed by Sarah and which was really fun. We were a little bit difficult to interview, I think. She kept going, oh, which question haven't we? Oh, no, you went through that. No, you covered that one. She's looking through her list of questions and we were just yapping away. Anyway, so we ended up writing this story together, well, separately and in alternating. So I'll just, I spent a long time figuring out. They gave me 5 to 8 minutes. And so I went through and it's like, oh, I better make it make sense because otherwise it's like, oh, well, there's one part of our life and now we're jumping over here. And so it came out to 5.5. And then I looked at the list, the timing, the schedule, and it says 10 minutes. So I'm adding a bit. It's going to read the first part, first of all. I didn't, no, I'm speaking. Yeah. His life with his dog, Archie. Here we are. So I had written this story before about one of our first dates together. So this was in 2004 that this happened, and we will jump around a bit later on. So it's called Crossing That Bridge, and it was me that wrote this part. As we walked along the path, I felt a quiver of carefully concealed excitement. Who was this woman walking next to me? And did we really have anything in common? I felt comfortable and relaxed by their conversation, other than feeling 16 again, and knowing that I sort of liked someone who sort of seemed to maybe kind of like me too. Even my vocabulary had taken several steps back into stammering insecurity. This was the second time we had met each other away from the security of the women's group. I had suggested a walk along the river. We crossed over the water once already, and we're now walking along the path of what I thought was the wild side, the unmanicured, more natural side of the South Saskatchewan River in Saskatoon. As we neared the train bridge, I had a sudden realization. Actually, I had several of them that clambered over each other in my mind like a pile of puppies all squirming to get to the warmest spot. We were going to cross the train bridge. I had never crossed it before. In all the years I've lived spent in Saskatoon, I've avoided it because I'm scared of it. Oh, heck, no, what? I briefly considered lying and saying I wanted to walk on further, but I really didn't want to walk the extra kilometers that crossing over the next bridge would entail. It was time to face the music and confess my trepidation. Just figured out there's a reason I've never been on this bridge, I began. It freaks me out a bit, being able to see down into the water underneath my feet. Judy didn't laugh at me. She seemed to be understanding and perhaps even a bit protective. She agreed to walk on the riverside of the wood and metal bridge and offered her arm for much appreciated moral support. I stepped onto the bridge and walked a few steps, trying not to look down at what was solid ground between the wooden ties under my feet, but below which would soon be a deep,
flooding, incredible force of water. I took hold of Judy's arm, my dread drowning out my embarrassment at showing myself to be so irrationally fearful and vulnerable. I knew logically there was nothing to fear. People, bicycles, and great heavy hulking trains thundered across this bridge all day, every day, without incident. The thought of a train roaring past inches away from me stopped me in my tracks. That noise and shaking would escalate my fear into downright terror. I looked behind me and then far ahead, along the line of creosoted ties stretching away in a tidy receding pattern. No trains coming yet. I took a deep breath, fixed my eyes on the platform at the other end, and sped up to get over as fast as possible, Judy keeping pace with me barely. My legs trembled as we descended the stairs at the other end, and I held on tightly to that cold tubular metal railing. I felt a sense of accomplishment having forced myself to make it across, and looked over at Judy, who smiled at me as we stepped down onto the solid surface of the asphalt path. There was a calm, easy certainty about this woman, not the kind of brashness or cockiness that always turned me off, rather just a quiet confidence that was reassuring and very, very endearing. That's a bit I wasn't going to read. This is the bit that I was going to read. So I grew up in Hampshire in the south of England, and it was there when I was 17 that I met Larry, who had moved to England as a teenager. We got married in 1977 in Devon, in England. In 1981, when our 3 children were aged 4, 3, and 1, I finally realized I was a lesbian and came out. I didn't come out to everyone at once, terrifying thought, and never to a few people. I initially came out to the people to whom it really mattered, well, Larry, and who I thought might understand, and only gradually to others as I felt safe and comfortable about their possible reactions. I remember this is 1981, this is not nowadays. Larry and I made the decision to move to Canada in 1982. After several months in Canada, with ever-increasing arguments and unrest, it was time for me to leave the marriage, for both of our sakes. We stayed friends though and co-parented our kids in a way that I'm proud of. After 20 years of raising my kids and working as a clown, I was hired as the volunteer coordinator at GLHS, Gay and Lesbian Health Services. Gone through a few name changes now out Saskatoon. I also led the women's group, and one Tuesday evening, Judy made that scary walk down the long hallway to attend the group. We met for the first time. You want to read your bit now? Okay, I'm skipping ahead too much here. So this is still 2004, getting together. I was not that tuned into the subtle signals, the accidental knee touch under a table, or even the less subtle ones, like the day Judy turned up at my house with some flower pots in the trunk of her car because she was in the neighborhood. I knew I needed some flower pots for giving plants to other people. I have to say, persistence was her middle name. I finally got it. And we became a couple. For the first 7 years of our relationship, we were the antithesis of needing the lesbian second date moving service, as the joke went in queer circles of that era. We each owned a very small house with no room to fit another person and all their stuff, which you would really understand if you saw our house. Anyway, a conversation to be heard between us at 10 o'clock in the evening was to ask each other who had clean clothes for the mornings. It was one way we decided which house we were going to sleep in that night. Eventually, we decided to buy a house together. Soon after, on our way back from a trip in the country, Judy popped the suggestion. I thought she was joking at first because she knew how I felt.
marriage and laughed. I had to work really hard to redeem myself by popping the question to her a week later. I have never regretted us following up on her suggestion.
Now my tiny little bit. Our wedding was a melding of families, our biological ones and our chosen ones. People from many different communities were a part of, or attended our wedding. A melting pot of personalities and backgrounds, so to speak. A whole bunch of you are here. Our goal for our wedding was for us to have fun as well as for our guests. We were blessed to have many family and friends who were willing to chip in to help us. Our vows included promising to remain goofy to each other, to make each other laugh, and to promise that that's a promise that's kept us in good stead. My welcome to the family was more of a roast of Barbara by her kids and her brothers. I was offered up a lot of really good advice from them that still holds true today, like, you want mom to do a job, pick up the tool, look pathetic, and she'll take it over and do it. Still works today. We asked 3 women playing a band to play a couple of songs for us at the dance in that evening, and they wouldn't stop. Chocolate Jesus became a huge hit that night in amongst our family and our friends. They played the whole night, and what a wonderful treat it was.
Okay, this moment. 2024, 20 years later, we chose the words together to tell this story about us and our lives together. The song of excitement grew into a deep fondness, followed by an even stronger feeling, and that scariest and best of phrases, I love you. Life has been good. We're happy in the home we purchased together, except for all the stuff we really need to go through. And the kids and our friends visit often. During COVID, we made an oasis in our backyard so that we could host our bubble. Coffee on the deck, freezing cold every Sunday morning. We no longer have that conversation about where we're going to sleep tonight. In fact, we're often asleep by 10, so it's just as well. We feel very lucky living in a cozy home with our kitty Susie, among our different circles and family and friends. Many of you are here. Thank you very much.
I'm just checking in again to see if we're doing music or no.
Jill's kids, my niece and nephew, are wreaking havoc in this store, so we're a little distracted, but we love them. Since you've seen this all turn back around, I should believe it. It's not what I have found. No, nothing sure, and nothing's quite as nice as you wish it could be. With that hopeful smile, stabbing in my heart, 'cause I see something me. Stabbing in my heart, no, seems like such a tragedy. The combat and good up and made. You don't have no one once stuff settles down and it's I keep my head up and see you around. Stepping in my heart and yes, something. Stepping in my heart and too long. Let it go, 'cause I'm ready to go home. I wanna feel something new. What's up? I'm ready to go. Yes, I'm finally ready to go. I feel like my songs are very sapphic and so dramatic, which is appropriate. And escaping. Okay. Oh, hey, finally made it. We don't like attention. Hello. Oh, you do, maybe. Good to see you. You can sit. Oh, yeah. You can just chill. This one's for you. Wow. Sitting around, wondering what's changing. Take it from me. You always wait till it goes off deep inside your brain. I'm in control. Had so much to gain. To do it. You can rely solely on yourself. Others can talk, they try to help. Graciously, it's how you want it. To accept, try and just forget. Show me you so you know, show me so baby, know what I want, you know how to see you from my sense. Don't even know you, but I show you how that's it. So that baby, here it is. Don't even know you, but I want to show you how that's it. Do we have time for one more? Or no? Got it? 7 more minutes. Why does this keep happening? This number's following me. Sorry. I'm Anna Haverstock. This is my sister Jill. And this is Rita. She's my niece. Last summer we got to open for Melissa Etheridge. It was very weird. She had like big limos that drove her in for her band. It was so cool. Girl. Let's match. You may live far away, but when I close my eyes, I feel you here. And all around, life gets complicated. You're right for waiting for me. Ooh. So you just what I mean. And I can't see life without you in some capacity. Ooh. No, yeah, no, yeah. Thank you so much for having us. My pleasure.
Sharon Jill Haverstock. We have one more speaker from our journal. So I'd like to ask Belinda to come up and share her and Beth's story.
It's a much different look from the front, looking down and being up at the looking up forward to one or two speakers. Thank you, Anna and Jill. A lot of you here were at Sparky Pride last year when they were, I mean,
It's as high as it can go.
okay, I'll shout. Anna and Jill opened our entertainment for Spark Your Fire last year. A lot of you here were there last year, so I just want to make the link between collaborating with Spark Your Pride and a month later opening for Melissa Etheridge. I think it might be a coincidence. I don't know. You can come to your own conclusions, but thank you. There's so many thank yous for all of you coming out tonight. We wanted a crowd and you're all here, so that's very endearing and exciting for us. I'm terrified of missing out on saying thank yous. So go to my list and there's scribbled all over. I guess I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you to Kristen and everyone at Folklore. Thank you to Jasper and everyone at McNally's. Thank you to everyone that was on the committee with me. Thank you to the students who did some of the interviews. Thank you to our friends and families and partners, and just thank you, everybody. What do I want to say? I want to say more things than I have time for. So I'll just talk about the journal itself. The process of putting it together was so rewarding. You know, the committee working together, the copies that we had, as Kristen said, arguing over commas, no commas, you know, punctuation, line breaks, everything. It was so much fun. We had a lot of copies together. The work was always fun, and that was really important to us. And the people who allowed themselves to be interviewed for being so open and honest and vulnerable, and building those communities even more. There's nothing more important than sharing your stories and being able to have a receptive audience for them. So the journal represents that. And I'm also thinking of if I had something like this to read when I was younger, if I had any idea back then, there was nothing representing in media, in television, in movies. There's nothing representing a way of life that I didn't even recognize within myself yet. So that's one of our hopes for this journal, so it reaches people of any age that have been afraid, don't know what's going on. You know, reading stories like this can really help the gel that there are many ways of being in this world, in this life. However you want to call yourself, however you identify, this is one of the things we hope for this journal. I'm getting all emotional. And I was telling some of us met for supper before, and it was such a jolt, a wonderful jolt, but it was such a jolt to find this in my mailbox. It's not in a plain brown wrapper. It's not in a plastic covering. It's literally out there. And that was so exciting. And you know, you would have been terrified to have this in your mailbox because somebody might know. Somebody might wonder why you're getting this magazine in the mailbox. So it was a jolt, but it was an exciting jolt. I think it represents that we've come a long way. And that was an exciting moment. Just one more thing. You know, we talked a lot within the committee and within our community. We talk about the word queer. It's a really difficult word for a lot of people because of the history and the negativity around that word. So, but we went with the word queer because it's easy. The acronym gets longer and then weirdly every year. And so we just want to acknowledge that it's a difficult word for some people, but we did choose it with thought and care. I was on the committee. I was one of the interviewers. I was one of the interviewees. And I wrote Best of My Story. I co-wrote another story, and I was the editor for the journal. So this magazine is very near and dear to my heart. It's very special to me. It feels like one of my children. It's literally out there in the world. I'm just going to read a few excerpts from my story. Our story is called Belinda and Beth, Upside Down Under, and that'll make a little bit more sense in a minute. How did I, a Canadian woman, born in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, 1957, and raised in Saskatoon, meet and eventually marry an Australian woman born in Carnarvon and raised on a dairy farm near Stanhope the state of Victoria. The first 4.5 decades of our very different lives between Canada and down under merged one day into a chance meeting neither of us anticipated. What synchronicities occurred to bring us together at the right time in the right place? Was it fate, karma, kismet, magic, an alignment of moons, stars, and planets? There's some special alignment happening right now. So any of you who are single, maybe that alignment will happen to you. And then my story is very long. Maybe that's because I was my own writer, so I don't have time to read it all. But you know, the rest of my story, you'll have time to read it yourselves. You know, it just talks about my life, and I'm just going to pick up here with this paragraph. By the age of 40, I finally realized that the problems I've been having in my relationships with men was that I've been trying to have relationships with men. I finally left that marriage, and in this I'm talking about the first marriage. There were a few, just say that right up front. I finally left that marriage after I felt my stepchildren were old enough now to not need me at home in their day-to-day lives. I gradually came out to myself and some friends, but was still closeted within my family. I started attending gay dances, as they were called then, and often danced the night away at Divas, the local gay bar. I regularly attended drag shows there. I soon started performing male drag as Dyke Van Dyck. Doing drag was a fabulous and fun way to play with and against gender. It was also intriguing to pass as male and be treated differently when I was in drag and stop for gas or cigarettes on the way out to a drag show. Passing as a man just because I dressed as one and had glued on facial hair was a fascinating experience. And I'm going to skip ahead a bit again. Where should I pick off? I had marked this in my magazine, which is out in the car. So, I'll pick up here. So I was involved in the drag community. I was having an awful lot of fun with that. I had drag brothers, one of whom is here tonight. And some of you who used to attend the bar in those days remember the Dover brothers. And we always wore, yes, thank you. We always wore plaid. We never wore matching plaid, but we always wore plaid. So this is a throwback to my drag days at Dyke Van Dyck. So during the next year of being single, I spent a lot of time writing poetry, socializing, dancing, doing drag, and refining my relationship checklist. And that's an interesting little bit, but I'll let you read that on your own too, about my 3 columns relationship checklist that there's must have, would be nice have, and deal breakers. So you can read the rest in the story. And meanwhile, Western Canada was experiencing a nursing shortage. Beth, literally on the other side of the world, was preparing for a temporary move to somewhere in Canada where there was snow. She hoped to be placed in Banff or Jasper, but she was offered a position at Royal University Hospital. She arrived in Saskatoon from Melbourne in August 2002. A few weeks later, she saw a large pride flag in the downtown window and discovered Gay and Lesbian Health Services, commonly known back then as GLHS. She learned they were holding a dance the next night, which is when I saw her for the first time. I was immediately interested in this tall, attractive Aussie. Although we had a short conversation that night, she didn't dance and didn't stay long. We continued to run into each other at various events, other GLHS dances, Bridge City courses and dances, and a Weird Sisters concert. So a lot of you here were at a lot of those events. We'd have brief conversations, but then she'd put on her backpack and ride off alone on her bike. Pride Week, June 2003, was life-changing. Beth was upstairs at Divas, and the moment she saw me alone, she zoomed down the stairs to chat with me. We spent the night talking and dancing. First check mark on my list. Again, you can refer back to that on your own. We closed the place out and I offered her a ride home. She'd ridden her bike to the bar, but luckily it fit in the back of my Mustang. I offered to pick her up the next day for a Sunday walk at Cranberry Flats, but to my surprise, she said she'd be going to the Unitarian service in the morning. Second check mark. The Unitarian congregation had been my spiritual home for years. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit more. After that, we started hanging out, but I wasn't sure if we were just being friends or dating. There was no proverbial U-Haul in my driveway, but the check marks kept adding up. Meanwhile, I was still quite involved in the local drag community, something Beth didn't know yet. Imagine her surprise when I offered to take her to a drag show at Divas and showed up at her door in drag as Dyke Van Dyck. Then I go on to talk about finally coming out to my family. You know, I was in my early 40s, that was a big deal, but Beth was accepted immediately. And especially after Mom accepted us as a couple, the rest of the family just kind of fell into line. It wasn't a big deal, but it's not the same story for everybody. There's all kinds of versions of what happens in people's lives when they come out. I do like this part of I like all of my story facing. I like this part too. Beth eventually moved in with me and we got engaged at Christmas in 2009. Before I even had a chance to phone and tell my daughter, her husband, professional photographer, phoned from Edmonton to say he'd like to add a gay wedding to his portfolio. He asked if I knew of any gay weddings coming up that he could photograph. Imagine his surprise when I said, "How about ours?" And then asked him to hand the phone over to my daughter. So the photographs, wedding photographs in this story were indeed taken by my son-in-law. So that's another special connection. He's a fabulous addition to the family and a fabulous photographer, and just so wonderful to have that be a part of my family and share that with all of you in this story and everyone that I tell that story to, which is a lot of people. I'll just finish. There's more, so much more. It's such a fabulous story. You have to be there. Yeah, so yeah, I'll let you read the rest of the story and I'll just say that this has been such a wonderful event tonight. We've been looking forward to this for a long time and it's so exciting and the excitement continues and I'm seeing more and more faces over there that I didn't see before. Thank you everybody for being here. This has just been such a wonderful celebratory event and thank you.
What's my 8:07. So after what time they're supposed to be here, I'm gonna just keep on. We did have a little bit of time in the agenda for any questions, if people had any. So while we can't let it go on for too long, are there any questions for either any people who've spoken about their story or for anybody on the committee or for folklore? Anybody got any questions? Thank you, Dean. Okay, then I'll turn.
I just want to note that there's a sign-up sheet on that table there as well as a couple of other items, but the sign-up sheet is most important because it's a sheet that you put your name on, please do. And it lets us tell you about future events like this and in the community. We're doing dances and we're looking at other activities to create or take the energy from this event and this work that we're doing as far and turn it into more for our community. So please take the time to and it's the list is an email list is what it is. And so we send out, we're trying to send out a monthly email with information about what's going on in Saskatoon in the community, particularly for us older queer adults. Thank you.
Not that I want the last word. Also on that table are magazine, the journal, you can take them home at no cost tonight. After that, McNally's will be selling them in the magazine section, but and please hang around a bit and visit and enjoy this fabulous community that we're a part of. Is there anything else, Terry? Jasper, we're good? Thank you again.